Hey guys, and welcome back to Digital Artcast. Thanks again for tuning in for another episode. As always, I hope you guys are staying safe and creative wherever you are in the world. I hope you've been enjoying the format of the last couple episodes. Definitely trying to change it up with guests and keeping a mix of both artists and developers, but also people who are a bit on the fringe. Because we had Renee on lastly, who was a solo game developer. So again, I hope you guys are enjoying it. Today we're kind of resetting the format again, back to what we usually do, which is concept designers, entertainment artists here on the podcast. And today is no exception. We have really great artists coming on today to talk about their experience in the industry world and what they're looking to really change about it moving forward. I've seen really great things online about the process they're doing and things they're taking on. So please welcome Mr. James Nguyen. Did I get that right?
Yep, perfect.
Yes!
Yes! Yeah, that's the way I want to hear it.
Round of applause. Oh god. Okay. Yeah. So James, we've kind of talked back and forth for a bit, and we were talking about getting you on the podcast. It's interesting when I see people who are, I wouldn't say unknown. I'm not going to say that you're unknown. Obviously, people know who you are, but I think there's a whole debate you've had with Leo about public facing stuff where you try to launch things where you're a bit more known because you're posting online, you're doing podcasts, you're setting up communities. So obviously for the I'd say the first half of your career, you focused on just being a good artist and getting work and doing your thing. And now you're kind of like aiming it towards like building things like your studio, like the communities you're building. So for people who don't know you, can you give a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Sure thing. So, hi guys, my name is James. Currently, I am a concept designer and a creative director of Beyond the Studios. And along the way, I've been making plenty of new friends, discussed great things, and I figured that hey, maybe I should, push forth this initiative of having a community as well, especially during much harder times last year when there's like this mass layoff going on.
Yep.
It's still affecting artists at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so the idea of that community is that we gotta bring people who are serious about the craft, who are
Mm-hmm.
passionate about it, who wants to learn more
Mm-hmm.
from the business standpoint and the financial standpoint of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just the technical side of things. Because this is something that Tim, my partner, and I are extremely interested in.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is because plenty of people in the industry, um, from student level to senior level, even still think that technical trumps everything. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a level of technical expertise in which you can do plenty of things, but then you cannot push forth even further because you lack the ability to manage your money or to build your business or to negotiate the right way.
Right.
And there are so many other aspects along that line that we can discover together. And so
Yeah.
that's why the community comes along.
Yeah.
Of
Fantastic.
course, I gotta be totally honest. The community is just up and coming. It's coming in slowly and gradually, but
Right.
personally, I think that just go slow and steady,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll get where we need to go.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, everything's a slow grind, and all of these things that you build, it takes. I mean, I think there was a work anniversary on LinkedIn the other day where, because I have on LinkedIn that I have the podcast, it's something I do. So, I think it's been 8 years since I launched the podcast, and we have 3,500 subscribers. But it's literally just because unlike Mache or like Jan or other people, I don't have that clout, I don't have that name behind me. So people kind of be like, why should I listen to this guy? But it's funny because I've spoke to so many people at such a high level now. I almost have that kind of industry knowledge, but like not with like the technical skills that come with it. So like I can understand what you should put in your portfolio, how you can get in a studio, stuff like that. But like I don't have that technical prowess that like matches those guys as well. But yeah, 8 years basically in the slow burn of people getting to know things and community, and then even like the Discord server we started with like 150 people, I think when it launched, and then we're close to 2,000 now. So it's like those things again, slow builds, years and years. Although the biggest influx was during the layoffs, because people obviously offered a kind of safe space for people to come into during the time when they lost their job, and we run job boards and stuff like that to help people. So,
Mhm.
So you've launched the studio kind of beyond this. Like that's a thing where you're that's purely just for work, right? That's a thing where you're using that to garner work and bring people work and complete projects. and then the artifact stuff is like is so they kind of two completely separate entities, like they don't exist together,
Yes.
right?
Well, okay. So the idea is that most people, when they get into the landing page of the Artefact community, right, they will see that it's actually part of Beyond Us website, and the reason is because I label it as being powered by the studio. The reason is because I fund it to some extent, to set things up, get moderators ready, get someone to look through data, trying to figure things out in the back end, trying to provide good information for people. Of course, along the way there are there's some bumps, and I cannot get as many people in as I wanted to. We have a very strict filter. Of course, the whole thing is free. There's no charge behind it. After a while of consideration, I find that to be the best case scenario for everyone. But then again, to I want the community to be one of the best one that people can join.
Right.
The
Yeah.
reason is because we want to make sure that everyone from student level to senior level can join,
Right.
and then there are criteria to get in,
Hmm.
right? Like we have to know your portfolio, we have to know your resume. Like even if you're a student and your work is up to par,
Hmm.
your resume is ready, even though it's very thin,
Yeah.
that's totally fine. It shows that you have industrial readiness,
You're
right?
trying at least.
Once
Yeah.
you have Yes, and once you have that and you're articulate enough through the form that we
Hmm.
provide, then you can join,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so with that kind of format set up, we are trying to make sure that the community is just at its strongest in terms of technicality. Of
Hmm.
course, they can still ask each other about Photoshop questions and vendor questions, but then the technical, like the fundamentals, are all there. They are ready to get
Hmm.
in, right? And so perhaps if they have trouble, then maybe they get laid off. So how they get work, right? How to
Yeah.
understand the business side of things, how to understand the financial side of things,
Yeah.
and that's where we can come in and help each other out.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, you're kind of aiming towards like it's less a community, I suppose, where Minds is just now, where basically everybody's welcome. Like everybody comes in and does their own thing, and it's a mix and match of like both junior and senior and mid and whatever else. But then with you, you're more aiming at just the people who are working, have worked, who have worked at senior levels and now have came out and have left their work and try to find something else. So yeah, so it's a more I hate using the word exclusive because obviously like it's not like you're trying to exclude people. You're just focusing on a different tier. You're focusing on a smaller,
Hmm.
niche part of the industry, which is like
Hmm.
less, a huge community, just a more defined, small pact of people together. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. Because I think that at this point in time, we have, schoolism, CGMA, we have
right.
Learn Squared. These places are where you get your fundamentals, right? You can get
Yes.
fundamentals straight from them. And
Hmm.
if not, you can go to school. You can go to art school,
Right.
art centers, all that jazz.
Yeah.
But for us, right, we focus on something else. We focus on the things that people barely talk about, right? So how to get, how to properly get clients, how to write emails, you know, how to
Negotiate for
run the
better money and stuff
business,
like
right?
that.
Like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Like and then I, Tim and I also provide we want to provide an opportunity for people to really understand much more in depth of the industry, in
Mhm.
the sense that I think people barely sit down and think, where do people get the money to hire us? Because
Right.
let's say 2 years back, 3 years back, right,
Hmm.
when the rise of metaverse and NFT was was everywhere, and artists can 3D artists got mistaken for being concept artists as well, and so they get hired like crazy.
Hmm.
Everyone get hired and thought that they were concept artists. They were the thing.
Yeah.
And after the whole thing dialed down, there's less money in the
Hmm.
pool. People get fired left and right.
Yeah.
They start questioning. And so one of the questions that for me, right, I always question things from a bit of a capitalist perspective.
Hmm.
Like, where did they get the money to fund us, right? What's happening there?
Yeah.
Of course, you can always like, oh, evil capitalists, they want to clean their blood to to get a new thing going on. And
Yep.
perhaps that's the case, right? They want to create a new system for what's to come, right? They want to
Yeah.
fund their money into new things, and
Yep.
so they had to lay off whatever that is deemed not key to their process,
Yeah.
right? So we want to delve into all these questions, like try to make sure that people get grasp of it, because the idea of having this kind of knowledge equipped is that you feel secure, but it's not a false sense of secure. It's a logical sense of
Right.
security,
Yeah.
right? And this kind of security set you on a steadier path and allow you to ask better questions rather than blaming people, rather than blaming AI even.
Hmm.
I can see some artists being lazy, being
Hmm.
not there yet, and
Hmm.
they start blaming AI left and right.
Yeah.
Perhaps you may or may not have AI problem,
Hmm.
but you may have money problem, you may have communication problem. So
Yeah.
try to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, yeah. I mean, I get your point of view also, but I think generally, I think AI was scary because it is the unknown. I think because now, obviously, with Feng's video, which we've both watched, where he talks about like why AI can't really replace someone and why it will, at this point in time, not really take away your job, right? But then the thing is, as well, I think for a lot of people coming in the industry and seeing that, especially people leaving school, they had the idea of like, well, what is going to happen? But I think until Feng really made the video, no one at a kind of super high level had really talked about why it wasn't a threat. Most people were just saying, well, it isn't a threat, but then not extending into like specifically why it won't take your job. Because singers, obviously, you guys know, yeah, oh well, what we do, like you can't replace that with AI because technical diagrams, things that are exploded out, turnarounds, like those are things that we do daily that really need to be done on that end, not the pretty picture stuff, the big building, the little person. But I think I mean, it's a combination of things. I think it's also a thing where ArtStation for the last 10 years has also, I'm not going to say poisoned the mind of young concept artists, but it has been a thing where you look at the front page ArtStation for years and years, you are thinking, oh, that's what I need to make. That's what needs to be in my portfolio is the cool picture stuff. Not really realizing it was guys like you who had done the technical stuff in your job. And then on the off time when you weren't working, you were making pretty pictures because you like doing that. But it wasn't something that was needed in production, right? That kind of thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that along that line, it's at times people want to rest their burden somewhere else,
Yeah.
and they will find reason to
Mhm.
to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, good, I hope you feel better, I hope you get the strength to move
Yeah.
on, do
Yeah.
better things,
Hmm.
right? But of course there will always going to be a threat
Hmm.
towards the future, right?
Yeah.
Short term or long term, you name it. There will always going to be some sort of threat going on,
Yeah.
uh, in terms of technological evolution and warfare
Even if
and
AI
all
wasn't a
that,
thing, a studio can
right?
just close because it runs out of money as well. That's the thing that happens. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Mm.
And so, like for me, as someone who runs a studio, right, I actually use AI quite often to solve certain problems. Let's say that I will use ChatGPT for sure to, to learn about let's say like pre-research, right?
Yeah.
Pre-research. Like I'm just gonna, like tell it like, okay, get me these things. Like
Yeah.
what should I know about it, right? And then I'll use that. I'll elaborate it in other platforms and in other means to understand certain aspect of certain matters better. And so
Yeah.
there are
Like
ways to
information questions, legal advice,
explore.
stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and so I think that in such aspects, people find it to be convenient. People
Mhm.
will only find it inconvenient when I think most of the time people will find something inconvenient when that thing starts attacking their wallet.
Right.
Like that is that is like one of the first things that people will react to.
Yeah.
I still remember that when Midjourney was at its beginning, I think it's V1 or V2,
Right.
people were laughing at it. Like they were playing around, like, oh, this is so cool. It starts creating like a door,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like start creating like this sci-fi palette that is kind of cool. And then the sharper the images become, the
Mhm.
more fearful people become.
Mhm.
But I still remember this quote. Well, I think this is a quote from a commenter on the Dune book series.
Right.
He basically said that uh, we shouldn't be afraid of AI essentially.
Hmm.
we should be afraid of the people who use the AI. If you
Right.
want to
Yeah.
find an enemy, right?
Hmm.
If you want to really find an enemy
Hmm.
at this point in time, right? Try to find the people who use it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to use the word enemy, honestly, because let's say that, because lots of things are still in the blur. We don't even know how specifically our enemy can be.
Right.
So perhaps we put everything in question, but try to stay steady
Hmm.
rather than panic and
Yeah.
feed the echo chamber. That's
Yeah.
something that I always try to tell my friends, that like, as much as people can get into drama and try to critique each other and try to be
Yeah.
brutal on each other,
Hmm.
perhaps don't become a reflection of an echo chamber. Have
Right.
your own thoughts on certain things, right?
Yeah.
And try to discuss that. Perhaps you guys will agree to disagree. You guys will not end at any sort of a final solution to
Hmm.
anything, but it's a progress all the same, and it would
Yes.
develop over time. So be patient about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a couple of things there. Definitely, one of the things that comes to mind is a post that was recently put up on Facebook and social media where an art director was part of a studio that he didn't want to name for obvious reasons, but they hired AI people to make art. And he was like, it's totally a thing. We hire people. But then he's like, but then the pain of trying to art direct those people was like, it was like a total waste of money because, they could make things to a certain degree. But then when the iterations came and it was a thing of like, right, change that, make that bigger, make that was where they fell down. And like, sure, in time, that might be a thing you could manually change. But even then, they lack such foundational skills that even the one person, I think he said, that knew Photoshop really even struggled to adjust what they could do because he's like, he couldn't, he didn't understand perspective or lighting or composition. Like he just was trying to fudge things together to make it look pretty. So there was that one thing. But also when I spoke to Renee in the last episode, who's a solo game developer, but she, made the game in a part time. She also worked at a major AAA studio as a producer. So she was like, the one thing I've seen, especially with like huge productions, is that if you give people $20 million to make a game, and then you say with AI you could save $10 million. They'll say, "Oh, great! There's another $10 million to do something else." Like they're never going to save that 10 million. They're always going to max out their budget because they want to make the best game. So like they
Right.
things two together are already starting to prove that AI essentially Gen R is not really a threat and never really was. But now we're finding that out obviously now. But like, yeah, I know what you're saying is that yeah, people have this fear they'll put on something to really like shroud something else that they're worried about. But like essentially, like now we know it really doesn't pose any threat. So that's a positive, I think. So, and then that's the thing, obviously, with the artifact community as well. You're seeing is that you're trying to then balance that and show people that like okay, right, stop worrying about the technical skills. Here's the real stuff you need to focus on, which is running a business, finding work, and then keeping it. Essentially,
Yep.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Honestly, though, like, I have I've been working as a consultant for quite a while
yeah,
when it comes to hiring people, and I can find that the studios, the AAA studios
mhm,
today are like they really truly want high level people, like to work on like extremely high level stuff.
yeah,
And I can see that there are so many people out there who are looking for jobs or looking for opportunities.
mhm,
And when I talk to my colleagues and my employers,
mhm,
or my clients, like they'll be like, we can't find anyone.
yeah,
We cannot find anyone like at
yeah,
this tier. Like, and if there is any, like, they are unavailable,
yeah,
right? So you can see that there's this sense of division. I know that people want to diversify and democratize art,
mhm,
not just because of AI. People want
mhm,
to democratize art, like even as concept art alone, right? Everyone
yeah,
like say, oh, easy access of 3D, easy access of these 2D tools, right?
right, mhm,
Images, photo, like kit bashing, photo bashing, all these things,
yeah,
right? With the democratization of that,
mhm,
uh, everyone wants to have a piece of the cake, but the reality is that there are standards to be reached, right? You
yes.
cannot just think that, oh, I master Blender, I can do anything now.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like that. It's much more in depth.
Yeah.
So it's like the layer of that is so immense that some people, especially younger guys who get into the industry, thought that, oh, I can make this this illustration, this keyframe, right? I'm so good now.
Yeah.
And they got a bunch of likes on Facebook and Instagram, and they thought they are something, they're someone, but they're just not there. And when they go hungry, they start questioning people and start blaming people.
Yeah.
Some others, they get luckier and they ask the right question, they
Mhm,
focus on the right things,
mhm.
and they get better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the thing. Like, I remember having this conversation with Emerson Tung years ago, who works at Ed Software, and he was always
Mhm,
saying that like the people he's seen that have accelerated in this industry are people who can take a napkin at lunch and draw a mech design on the back of it, and then hand it to someone and be like, "This," like that fundamental core skill of being able to draw at that level quickly is something that like people still try to fudge with 3D and like, oh, I can model really quickly. Like, cool, you still need to draw over it. Like, like there's a whole part you're missing, and like I'm guilty of it. Like when I first, left my engineering job and started to get in the industry, I could work
mhm,
3D to an extent. So I was like, oh, this will fill in the gaps and I'll be able to do stuff really quickly. It can be a tool used to fill in things. Like if you're at your level, for instance, and you need to draw a comp really quickly, yeah, sure, modeling in 3D in 5 minutes might be quicker than drawing the whole thing in perspective. But like you still have that core fundamental so that once you've drawn things, you can spot in the corner, oh shit, my perspective's off there. Or like, oh no, that's not working, I need to move it. Like that eye is something that you almost can't train. Like you can't really like obviously train taste or style. It's something that you're kind of like having to build along your foundational skills. And those foundational skills help build that style, that kind of idea of like what looks good and why things are specifically made in a scene to look that way because it'll work, later down the line. But yeah, like people will fudge foundational skills really early on, which is strange really because like there are so many awesome schools that now offer that, even things like Artwad, like Antonio's school, who like focus on purely just the fundamentals of drawing. But then yeah, I mean, and like you said, it's a problem you see with students, right? And do you think that's been a thing that has been like maybe since like ArtStation came on till now has been a thing that has really been like the biggest elephant in the room no one's talked about is the lack of foundational skills with young concept artists?
mhm. I I can only assume that
Hmm.
the way people treat ArtStation is like
Hmm.
a social media and not a portfolio platform,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
right? They
Yeah.
want to present the it's like Instagram models. They want to present the best images of themselves, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So with ArtStation, it's like the same thing. They want to share the best images. So
Hmm.
highest quality of renderings, highest quality of lighting, highest
Hmm.
quality of everything, but
Yep.
barely any progress, like barely any process images, right?
Right, which is what art directors talk about is the thing when they look at people's portfolio, that's the thing that's missing, right? Is they can't see how they got to the final image, just that there is the final image, right?
Mm, right.
Yeah.
I think Tim also discussed with me on the aspect as well that
Mhm,
he always tells his students that, okay, look at this guy or this girl's portfolio. Like
mhm,
she's working with Marvel Studios now, and
mhm.
she's doing only line art. You only
Right.
see one image worth of a rendering.
Yeah.
The rest is just line art because
Yep.
the idea is what matters. It's the juice, right? But
Did you see?
yeah, but the juice is not it's not, it may not be the prettiest thing, but
Uh-huh.
it's the most valuable thing throughout the process of hiring you as a concept artist.
Yeah. It's
So
functional.
focus on that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like even for me, right, like when people look into my work and they see like, oh, polished pieces, I post plenty of polished pieces. I show
Yeah.
some progress works, like some process, some whip, and
Mhm,
then but then again, I I am confident in a sense that the work I present, right,
mhm,
all the call-outs, all the presentation,
mhm.
they are extremely functional, even when they are rendered. So even when they are not rendered, it's functional all the same because the design is there.
Yep.
And so if you strip off all the pretty renderings,
Mhm.
what do you have?
Yeah.
Right? If the core is not there, then
Yeah.
something's off. Of course, the thing with for me, right, like the relationship between me and 3D and 3D software
Mhm,
is that 3D software allows you to play with things in real time,
mhm,
fooling around, having fun. But one thing that I'm extremely careful about is the two things that I'm extremely careful about whenever I do anything in 3D
mhm.
is lighting
Yep.
and materialization. So whenever I create a material, I'm gonna question myself, right? What kind of roughness, what kind of glossiness, what kind of metallicness? Will there be any sort of transmission? Will there be any sort of subsurface scattering? What's the
Mhm.
deal here? So
Yeah.
and all those questions will feed towards the context of the design, and it makes sense to have that rendered layer on top of the design. And with the strong design and with a strong preparedness of the materials, the combination is great. And
Mhm.
that's why I get jobs, right?
Yeah.
Because like whenever I do these things, because I there are periods of transformation for me every year. Like I will spend time learning new things, touching up
Mhm.
my portfolio, pushing to new heights. And I will always list things out on a piece of paper or in my notebook. Like, oh, I'm just gonna write out that,
Mhm.
okay, I want to achieve this kind of communication skill,
Mhm.
right? In terms of material, in terms of shape language, form language,
Mhm.
all that jazz.
Yeah.
And then I will attempt to work on that.
Mhm.
And the moment that I know that I was on the right direction was when I get into interviews with people and
Mhm.
they be like, I am impressed with your this and this and this. And those
Yeah.
are the exact same thing that I have written out in my notebook, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's when I know that the effectiveness of my learning, of my development is there.
Mhm.
And so I don't know how people like what kind of I think for different people they have different metrics to measure their technical success. For
Mhm.
me, it's very specific, right? God, I have all these things to nail, all these points. These
Mhm.
points can be proven by this and this and this,
Yeah.
right? These images from this artist show me how to work on it. I should replicate that. Try that, right?
Yeah.
Be specific about it.
Yeah.
I think, and at this point in time, I also want to mention that the idea of being a concept artist, right, is that of course you can be creative. You can still be creative, but imagine having being structurally creative, right?
Yeah.
Be creative and structured in a sense that imagine that if you have if you have like a nuclear reactor, right, with a false shell,
Mhm.
right, it will break.
Yeah.
But if your shell is strong, the shell is like the fundamentals, right?
Mhm.
Is strong. You know
Mhm.
exactly what to hit. You know exactly what to put on that shell.
Yeah.
Then the reactor core will be extremely powerful without
Right.
breaking anything, and
Yeah.
it's gonna create the right kind of reaction that you need. And
Yes.
so I treat myself and my skills and other aspects alongside concept art the same way,
Yeah.
right? Try to fortify that structure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, essentially, like speaking to Neil and a couple other people I know who have went to FCD school in Singapore, they talk about how like even in a short term where you maybe do a year study there, you spend like 80% of your time drawn. Like that's a real thing where people like sink that into you early on that your core fundamental drawing skills needs to be like super high. Like, sure, we're going to do bits where we show you how to make an environment in 3D or like maybe use some lighting and stuff like that, but essentially your whole foundational process needs to be built initially in 2D. You need to be able to draw efficiently, quickly, really well with straight lines and circles. Like that's a thing that really needs to be like nailed before you go any further on the path. Um, so yeah, I think you're right in what you're saying. Like the core fundamentals are things that look on, with art directors trying to hire people, which like is so right. Like I speak to again, like we talked about this earlier, how like my technical skills aren't quite marrying like the notoriety I have in the industry. But like when I speak to art directors, they say the same thing of like people say there's like no jobs, but there's like so many jobs, but we can't find people that are like good enough to hire. Because also with a lot of the leads and seniors, they're already in other work. They can't leave that job to come do three other jobs. Like they have to stay in one place or work on one thing at a time. So yeah, that is a thing that people are really lacking, and art directors are confirming that is that they can't find people like at your level or like even a wee bit below that can come on and do a project and do it very well and quickly. So yeah, and I take it like the people you've hired also like I mean it's a whole thing I think I have found like we talked about this earlier is on is like within Asia specifically like there's a whole movement of like really talented super well high level designers with their own studios and their own adventures in the entertainment industry with movies and films and games and do you think there's like a secret behind that of why like the Asian market has exploded so much and has so many highly technical people like is it just like is it a work ethic thing or is it a thing where like, you maybe have focused on like the foundations early on or
Well, we're all hungry. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
um, I'll, I say I'll say that it really varies. Well, I know for a fact that plenty of people around Asia are extremely hardworking. That's for sure.
Yep, yep.
They're hardworking because like they just, let's say, for I can say that, I talked with Leo Aviro for quite a while, and
Yeah,
his background, he was not well off. He
yeah.
had a lot of things going on in his life, but then he, it's just pure resilience
Yes.
on him. And of course he's very passionate as
Yep,
well with
yep.
art. And so with passion,
Mhm.
with resilience, right, he made it happen.
Yes.
And
100%, yeah.
right, like he's now one of the art directors
And Pixel
in
Brush.
OPB, right?
Yeah.
So and
I mean, he's
he's
been very
one
open
of,
also about just in general,
yeah,
the idea was that he either had to get a job in art or he was going to basically work a job where he had to drive 3 or 4 hours a day, do manual labor for like 10 hours of that, and then try and feed a family of like 5 or 6 people. So he was like, it had to work. I had to make it work, basically.
yeah. And I think, like it's partly resilience, but
Mhm.
it's also about trying to find your own voice,
Right.
right, in this world.
Mhm.
I know that everyone is going through that. Like approximately 8 billion people are trying to find that.
Yeah.
But for some of us,
Mhm.
certain things come earlier. I know
Yeah.
that there are artists who really make it into the industries when they're in their late 30s as a concept artist, right? So so it's fair to say that um, there will be tougher times. There are times
Mhm.
when you are so confused that you have just to slowly figure it out. And some of us are more fortunate that we ask the right questions, we have
Yeah.
the right kind of tools, we grasp, we were able to take on the right opportunity, right? All the prepared, all the preparation
Mhm.
was there for us, and we got the right opportunity, and things just went uphill. Of course, there are also ups and downs after that,
Yeah.
but that's the process. I also expressed with Leo that we are extremely fortunate that we could make this happen. There are plenty of
Right.
people in Asia who are extremely passionate, but perhaps they lack something. They didn't ask the right question at a certain point in time, such
Yeah.
that they get pulled away from their true potential
Yeah.
to be able to unlock the potential.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with people in the West, I suppose.
Yeah.
I For me, right, like the first artist that I find to have extreme resilience
Mhm.
on my journey of finding out about the community is actually Maciej Kuciera. Like he talked about,
Actually, yeah.
yeah, he talked about how harsh his life was
Oh, in Poland, yeah, yeah, he's talked about
back in
that. Yeah, we
Poland,
we had him
right?
on the show, and he said the same thing. Is like, yeah, it was just that idea of being from that, like, what conceived a poor country, and not having
Mm,
access to money like most people maybe do in the West, or a good living standard. Yeah.
yeah. For me, right, I consider myself to be much more fortunate compared to many other Vietnamese out
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
since the beginning. But
Yeah.
then again, like my parents will always, they have this sort of contradictory way of saying things. They'll tell me that, okay, when you get out there into the world, you just need to make enough money to get yourself happy, and
Mhm.
if you get there, that's great.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
all we want for you.
Mhm.
And so they tell me, like, don't have to be special, don't have to be anything else, like just be yourself, just be happy. And I get to see them working their butt off
Yeah.
on so many things, in our lives,
Mhm.
that I was like, this is unbelievable. They keep telling me this like happiness thing, but they work so hard. I
Yeah.
should try to do about the same, right? They are
Right.
getting
Yeah.
somewhere right. so
Yeah.
so so that was instilled in me from the beginning.
Mhm.
And this kind of resilience, or this idea of being resilient, this idea of being curious to be resilient and to be motivated by it,
Yeah.
I think some of us just got it slightly earlier, and we
Mhm.
get there at the right time in the right place,
Mhm.
and things happen for us
Yeah. Yeah.
in a bright light.
Yeah. And I mean, look at you now, obviously you've own your own studio, you're running an art community, you're hosting your podcast, you're talking internationally, you're consulting, like you've definitely like quote unquote made it, right? Like you've hit that high echelon of like professional artists, so and is that a thing where like Artifact was a way of kind of giving back? Was that a thing where you wanted to like reach out and help other people because you had done so well?
Um, Definitely.
Mhm.
That's definitely part of the reasons. I think I want to get into the reason why I want to build a community, because from the beginning when I was trying to explore, like, to self explore, to find what I'm good at, I was trying my hands on so many things like graphic design, photography, cinematography, taking videos, making
Mhm.
films, doing
Mhm.
all sort of random stuff, like even 3D.
Mhm.
And then I figured out, okay, I've had enough skills to do plenty of things. Let's try to find the thing that I like, and then find concept art and then illustration, right? And then I start googling people's name, and then I got to find a couple of YouTube channels, like I think there's Mark Renee,
Mhm.
and then there's FCD, there's Tyler Allen.
Yeah.
There are so many, there were so many artists that were trying to share their knowledge to the world, and I was so inspired by them, and I wanted to know more about their process and how they get into the industry. So I went to Facebook. I text out, I just type out all their names. I
Mhm.
find their Facebook. I add them as friends on Facebook, right?
I've done the
And
same.
then and and then what's like the more and the further layer that I did was that I look into their posts.
Mhm.
I find ones who are concept artists and illustrators, and then I'll add friend with them as well,
Yeah,
right? And
I've
then
done
I'll
the
do
same
that
thing.
over and over and
That's
over again. So like
why
it's
I
like
have so many
friends of
friends
friends
on
of friends of
Facebook.
friends, right?
Yeah.
So after a while, like I just add like plenty of friends, and now I have plenty of friends on Facebook. Facebook is like a wild west, right?
Yeah.
But it's like a more it's like a happier version of a wild west,
Right.
in which you can just talk to people, and that's how I slowly create my personal community, like the people that I can connect with. There are plenty of people that I text, I think especially with the guys who are higher up.
Mhm.
Whenever I tell them I'm a great fan, they will just shy away, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm so tired of this. Like, you know,
Yeah.
but some of them will be extremely generous with their time, and they will reply, and that's when things happen. And I started to get into to other Discord communities, to to just text some people personally, ask them how they're doing, ask them how they feel about
Yeah.
certain subject matters, learning more from the industry on that front, that way. And the reason I was working with the online community so much instead of the local community was that when I was discovering concept art, I was in Singapore. I now live in southern Vietnam. I travel to Singapore a couple of times a year to do business, and uh, back when I was in Singapore, the people that I studied with in school were they were not going for the direction that I want to go for, which is going for concept art for AAA games, for films, and 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 so I find myself to be quite lonely to some extent, right? No one
Mm.
understands exactly what I go through in terms of the future occupation that I want to go for, and so doing that act of asking to talk, like asking people, whether I can talk to them and
Mhm.
connect with them, right? Kickstart my whole career,
Yeah.
right? I've had so many favors, uh, done
Like
right.
recommendations and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. And so I I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And now when I am at the point in which I know that I can share certain things that made my life much easier as I went on as I go on to this creative journey,
Mhm.
I decided that okay, let's share that to people.
Mhm.
Try to see what sticks and whatnot, and hopefully the outcome is great. I've
Mhm.
had messages of people who they just text me like and told me that hey, like your advice on this and that was great. I didn't get to learn this when I was much younger, or I haven't experienced this yet, but thank you for notifying me on this on my feed
Yeah.
on a random day, right? Because for me, I have had so many random days of that sort in which I
Mhm.
have some sort of value that I didn't expect, right? There's
Yeah.
so
I
many
mean,
goodness. There's so much goodness out there that like we can harness.
yeah.
And
Um,
so if I can give back to that pool, that's just
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, it's also the reason I started the podcast, right? Because I couldn't give technical advice. I couldn't give lectures on things that I didn't know. So I knew that one thing I was good at was talking. So I could go and talk to people and ask them questions about, how do you get a portfolio? How do you get in a studio? What do you do for work? And how do you? So, and I mean, it's the same with me in a sense that, like, you being in Singapore, like, not that like Scotland is, a country maybe cut off from the West, but like, essentially people won't really look at people look at Scotland as a holiday destination or someone you go to visit for a vacation. But when
Mm.
you're talking to people in Los Angeles and New York and California, and you know, that seems like a world away. So the idea with the podcast was, I was trying to bridge that gap of like, meeting those people, because I had aspirations like you. I didn't want to just work in like a local studio or a small indie dev. I wanted to work in bigger projects with maybe like international clients. So yeah, it was the thing as well where I would add people on Facebook and then be like, hey bud, and a good way to break the ice of talking to people is like, do you want to come on my podcast and we can talk about your art? Because it gives them a platform of like, they can talk about something they love, they can talk about their journey, they can talk about projects they're working on or things they want to promote. And I get the time to then form like a relationship or a friendship with the person I'm interviewing, like yourself or like anybody else that comes on the podcast. So I totally relate to that journey. And again, like I've had messages from people years down the line now, like a guy from Australia a couple of years back who was like, he was an engineer also, and he was like, I listened to your journey. Like, I'm now leaving my engineering job. I'm going to go back to art school because you done it. And, like that's the ultimate pay of respect of like people sending those kind of messages. Even, Philip Park, when I actually went to Lightbox in LA in 2019, I was sitting on the plane from Chicago to LAX and ordered a drink. And the guy sitting next to me, Philip, turned to me and he was like, "Are you Gordon Neal?" And I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Yes." He was like, "Oh, dude, like I recognized your voice. I listened to your podcast. Like it got me through college." I was like, "What the fuck? What?" What I mean? Like absolutely blew my mind. And then at Lightbox, when I was like tabling with Raf Gazzetti, like people were coming up to me and being like, "Oh, hey," and like, "I'm a big fan of Raf." I was like, "Cool." And I was talking to them and they were like, "Do you I recognize your voice?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I have a podcast." They were like, "Oh, like Digital Artcast, like I've listened to you for like years and years." That was just like crazy that like I had that kind of reach from like a small room in Scotland, where people don't really know where even Scotland is half the time, to then be like, your podcast has basically like got me through school, got me through my job, got me through, like, yeah, that feedback is worth more than like money or like any exposure. It's the idea that you've helped someone in the world. And I think that's what's good about your community, is that at least you're providing a platform to help others and connect.
Mm. I think it's the kind of like it's a kind of silent hero. It's almost like a silent heroism
Yeah.
sensibility that you start to feel when people say that to you. It can feel quite gratifying knowing that you're giving back to the community
Yep.
in such a great light.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to be able to do that. It keeps you become motivational, keeps you awake and try to do better, right? Like
Humbles
that.
you as well.
And
Really humbles you at
yeah,
the same time. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
it's
mean,
just great.
so you built the community. Your studio's obviously doing really well. What's now like the next thing for you guys? I mean, you've launched the podcast, but is there a kind of like further thing down the line that you're trying to aim towards now, like with the community? Are you trying to expand it? Are you trying to bring more people in? Are you like what's the next kind of steps for like Artefact community within Beyond Us?
Mm. For us, it's at this point in time we're focusing on engagement a bit, in
Hmm.
a sense that we could try we want to we are trying to get people to become more active in the
Hmm.
community. We have very few people in at this point in time,
Hmm.
but and so we want to take that opportunity to allow people to know each other, to engage in more conversations so that they
Right.
know each other well enough
Hmm.
to to have better conversations within
Mhm.
within us, and then we're slowly opening up the filter. We're trying to get more people in, trying to tell people that that oh they can apply in now, or
Mhm.
they can sign up, they sign in now.
Mhm.
Or let's say that with people who we reject, right, the protocol is that there will be an email directly to them as to
Mhm.
the reason why they are not accepted into the community. Because
Right.
let's say that, while you haven't received anything rather than that email can be educational as well, in the sense
Right.
that we'll tell them that, hey, like, we have seen your portfolio, we've seen your resume, you have these things that you have to take care of. Once you take care of that, we will get you in like right away. Just text us,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so for that process to become more rapid, like I will have to, to invest a bit more resources into it.
Right.
um it's quite, philanthropic in some sense, but I find it to be very gratifying, and it can help people along the way. And of course, it's like sometimes I'll tell my business partner, like, we can hire some really great people from this platform,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Because these guys are very prepared. They
Mhm.
are very specific with what they want to do. That's great. So perhaps later down the line, when we have more projects of their strengths, right, let's just hire them, because
Yeah.
they have been cleared of all these standards that we set out for. The standard that we set out for in the form is exactly what we like. It's exactly what we need to know a person to hire them, right? It's almost like the first interview
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the
Essentially.
for the form.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I just cannot wait to, keep on being patient, being
Yeah.
steady
Mhm.
with the community, try
Yeah.
to allow people to engage more often in more technical topics. Topics are a bit drier, right? Because we need encouragement to talk about drier topics, tougher topics.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, everything is more jazzed up, then I can bring more people in.
Right. Yeah,
So
essentially.
that's the
Yeah,
deal.
I mean, it plays a couple of ways because obviously when you're running a studio and you need maybe fresh talent or something really quickly, if you know there's people in this community who have a long track record of like working with you or talking with you in the community and you know they're good at what they do, sure, it's an easy hire. You can just message the person on Discord and be like, "Hey, we need someone. Would you want to interview?" But also, or the consultancy thing you have is that if other studios are then looking for people too, and they need people fresh as well, you can be like, well, my studio is at capacity and we have all the artists we need. But if you need artists, then we have this bank of people that, are now able to work and can then I mean, Antonio's done a very similar system with Artwad where the people who have spent years working on his system and then getting really good, they have a platform now and or a piece of his system where their work is shown to art directors and people in the industry, and then they can come in directly and then hire those people from the school who have done really well or hit that point where they're at a working level. They can make things really go. So, like, yeah, it's a cycle of things. Like, you bring people in, you help, and you get more people to help with your studio and help with that. So, like, yeah, it makes sense from not only just like not just helping people, but a business side of it as well, like being able to like funnel those people into work or into your studio to help with projects. So yeah, it makes sense. And then
Yeah,
of course you and
yeah.
Tim are going to make more content as well with the podcast. So yeah.
Mhm. And we cannot wait to bring more people in, because Tim and I put the podcast up slightly for like a month,
Mhm.
because we are extremely busy with our own businesses. But
Yeah.
at this point in time, we're ready to bring it back. We will go at a steadier pace,
Mhm.
less frequent compared to last time, but we'll try our best to bring the highest quality of guests into the podcast, and
Yep.
to discuss great things. I also have shared with people online that we will have Leo Averill to come on
Mhm.
this Sunday to talk about his journey and what's been happening in the industry. So that's gonna be great. We're trying to have a much better outreach, and perhaps even you can help us like reach out to some other artists as well, because
Yep.
I know that there are plenty of opportunities to talk about, and not just art, right? Like, but the business of it, the
Yeah.
journey that goes through it. uh, there's this thing that I want to kind of like segue through
Mhm.
is this idea of wins and failures.
Right.
In the community, there's this section in which you can state your wins if you have new if you have like any sort of new opportunities and new gigs going on, or failures, and you tell people about how you fail on that front, so that people can learn from you if you have enough courage to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Some people they might want they want to show themselves as humble, and so they will not post their wins. Some people will don't want to damage their ego further, or some other reasons they are shy, or so they will not tell their stories about their failures.
Failures.
But there are
Yeah.
ways. But there's the platform, right?
Yeah.
We allow people to tell each other stories. I think that is extremely crucial.
Mhm. I think the
I
failures especially because,
Yeah.
like, sorry to interrupt, but just there was a
Oh
there's
no, go ahead.
a video from Forrest Amell, who works at Blizzard now, but has also worked on Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, but he done a whole video on, like, the illustrations that basically got him rejected, like, things he would put up and, like, the art directors were like, "This is trash," and, like, it's not hitting the standards, it's not good enough, and, like, I know that video has done really well now and resonated with a bunch of people because I think for so long we see guys like you at the highest echelons being like, "Oh, I just worked with Disney, I just worked with Marvel, I just worked with fucking Sony, whatever." But then, there's also times I think even at your level, you'll apply at studio and it's not just a good fit. So they'll say, "No, sorry, it didn't work out." And I think the more honest people are with those losses, also it resonates more with people because it's great to see people succeed. But I think it humanizes you when you can see that, like, people like even like Forrest, who are like, I mean, Forrest is one of the best illustrators in the game, and like for him to get told by Riot Games at that point, your stuff isn't good enough. It's really humbling. It really does bring people back down to that human level of like, oh, I can listen to this person now because they're not perfect. So yeah,
Yeah, and of course, like the podcast is not the only thing where I start spreading my let's say my hard earned lessons. I
hmm
also shared that on my Instagram quite recently as well. Like I started posting snippets of what I've learned throughout my journey, and
hmm
res- some people resonated with that quite a bit. I got plenty of messages from people saying that, oh, they haven't learned this before, and they thank me for showing them this so that we can be more prepared.
yeah,
And one of the things that I have shared is about trying to plan out your future.
right,
And the idea of planning your future as an artist, right, is to ensure that you know where you need to go a bit. I know that some people like they just say that, oh, but the fun the best part of a journey is the journey itself, right?
yes,
But of course that will not last very long if your ending is devastating.
yeah,
How about try to plan something out for a bit,
yeah. Have a
right?
goal. Yeah,
And yeah, and of course, like for me, when I also posted this idea that when planning a future, perhaps you should not start with a schedule or a goal. How
mm,
about try to look into yourself and ask yourself, like, what are your principles, how you guide yourself through life, right?
right,
How do you stand against these things, or stand for certain things in certain ways?
yeah,
And for me, right, like I have made myself pretty clear with the kind of principles and the morals that I need to uphold in my works. I try my best to and that affects my art to a great extent, because let's say that with me being creative, I know for a fact that I become creative because I am extremely curious.
right,
I figured that out, and so by being curious, I slowly try to nail down the subject matters that I'm interested in, and try to channel those things back into the art or back into the design that I work with, and it feeds off each other immensely.
yeah,
And so as an artist, I find for every artist, right, like they may not see themselves that way, but
hmm
each artist is an art business,
yeah,
right? Imagine treating yourself as an art business, and you have to figure it out, right? So perhaps have some rules for that business. So have some rules for yourself. And so whenever you get into trouble or have some sort of situation in which the negotiation doesn't come to the right terms, you have that set of principles to lean onto. And let's say that you go through a whole interview, and they be like, your work is great, but it's not for us. So
Right.
and if you don't ask any further questions, you may keep on asking yourself, like, why am I stuck here for like 3 interviews already?
Yeah.
And so imagine not being able to trace back to your own principles. You
Hmm.
will make that mistake over and over again. So how about figure out your principles, figure out your morals,
Yeah.
right?
Which has obviously
Perhaps,
guided you through what you've done. Yeah.
yeah, and let's say that you look into that and you be like, oh, okay, so in these instances, I was boasting about myself too much. I was telling people that I'm the best. That is detrimental to the extent that people don't understand my viewpoint. They want someone who are more grounded. So you
Right.
figure out your principles and the flaws within it,
Yeah.
and then you slowly get better because you start changing it. You start steering yourself towards a better path, right? Some people may say that, oh, I don't know, I don't want to figure out my emotions. I am who I am. I'm good with what I have. I don't want to figure this out. Well, that's on you. But let's say that if there's a need to figure it out, it's best that you should figure it out, right? It could benefit you. Because I would tell this to people because it benefited me. I was I was young. I was very young once, and I was like, okay, I want to live however I want to live, and people can tell me whatever. I don't care. And then, when stuff gets harder and you start to have more time to reflect upon yourself, and you start seeing, okay, I can see the reason why they tell me this. I should just pick myself up. And yeah, it gets better because, again, I think I said this multiple times already, but uh, perhaps try to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
It all comes down to that. For me and my journey and my career and my decisions, it all fits the principles that I make, and I'm willing to get my principles obliterated if it's wrong, if they are
Yeah.
wrong in certain aspect. And that has helped me out a lot throughout my journey.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, it's like what we talked about early on, where like people will blame AI, because they're not getting work or they're getting laid off. But if the question really is, like you said, the right question. So the question is, why am I not getting work? Well, you look at my portfolio honestly and ask, what about this portfolio is not making me hireable? And sure, it might be your foundational skills, you're not drawing enough, or your rendering's really bad, or your lighting's bad, or you're using too much 3D and not enough 2D. So like, yeah, there's a thing where like it's the self reflection of an artist. You have to constantly be looking at yourself and thinking, why am I not getting what I'm wanting? What is it that's stopping me? Is it me? Is it something else? Because like rather than ask the question, sometimes the automatic thing is to push the blame onto something else, like you said, like AI or like the state of the industry. Which I think also as a caveat, we can say that even having spoken to people who are art directors and leads, is that the industry has never really been this bad for a long time. It definitely is in a shit state right now. But like Timothy also said, is that if your work is good enough, if you're doing the right things, then you will get back into work quicker. You will find things quicker. You will get that leg into a studio where, like, sure you've been laid off, but then if your portfolio is really good and you're doing the right things, you'll find work again somewhere. It might not be like a AAA, it might be, but as long as it's work, right, you will find work. So yeah, it is a thing of the perchance to like blame something else, but like you said, asking the right questions keeps you on that path of the way you want to go in the world, and which has led you to where you
Yeah,
are today. So
yeah. And and along that, there's also this possibility that any of us can be blind towards something,
yeah,
right? We just shut ourselves off from certain
mhm,
aspects of life, certain aspects of business, certain aspect of the art, of the
yeah,
craft. And so I think that at least the first step is to have an acknowledgement of that,
hmm,
and then allow yourself to have the right kind of exposure. And the exposure that I'm mentioning here is the exposure of criticism, constructive ones, of course. People can hide behind the curtains of social media and getting all the likes and they're happy.
yeah,
But how about try to find someone who are much higher of a level compared to you and just text them, hey, I would love to to know what your opinions on my work. I'm struggling to find out. and hopefully you can help me out. If you cannot help me out because your time is precious, I'm willing to pay, which is what I did actually. I did that to some of the professionals in the industry.
Mentorships,
I just
yeah.
asked them, yeah, I just like, can I pay you to figure this out for me? Can I get a mentorship, anything? And try to get that cold icy bucket of water on you, right?
Yeah,
So that you can brighten up, you get the adrenaline going, you start seeing your flaws, you start fixing it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely, I agree with what you're saying. Is that like, yeah, self reflection is the, I think, not just for artists, right? As a human being, it is the hardest thing to really have a self reflection of why am I not in the place? Like, why am I not happy? Why am I not in a job I like? Why? Like, those are the things I think that it's almost a fundamental human being thing. It's not just an artist thing, but like, yeah, it plays more into art. I think because as artists, we're all low level philosophers. We're all like really asking ourselves, what is life? Why are we here? But yeah, I think the thing with self reflection is it's a very learned skill. Like it's hard to do as a normal person. You don't really look inwards a lot. You look out into the world and what's around you. So yeah, I think you're right in what you're saying is that the more you can do that introspection, that self reflection, and then ask people, what do you think of me as an artist? Like, where am I failing? Like, analyze me, look at my work, tell me what you really think. It's hard to do, I think, because it's very vulnerable. It's very, because people can definitely. I know students who've went to portfolio reviews and people have basically tore them a new asshole. They've basically said your work is terrible. You're never going to get hired. Like, why are you handing me this piece of shit? Which is funny because Timothy really talked about when Feng was looking at portfolios at IMAG. Right, he really was like, what the fuck, guys? Like,
Yeah,
I've seen like
he
40 portfolios and they're all terrible. So
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's kind of like facing this obliteration somehow gave them hope,
Right.
simply
Yeah.
because that they see their flaws, they
Yeah.
see the darkness within them,
Hmm.
and how to put that under control,
Yeah.
simply because someone tells you to stop doing this.
Right.
Well, that is the wrong way to go,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think that in the world of much harsher idea of censorship, people are afraid to take on criticism.
Hmm.
But it is to the extent that they are afraid of taking criticism in their own personal lives, right?
Right.
They censor the people around them as well because
Hmm.
it makes them feel comfortable. I don't say this to aim at any artist. Some of you, if you guys go through that, then figure it out. And if you guys don't go through that, and you know someone who goes through that, then right? And
It's the
so
echo chamber, isn't it?
yes, exactly. That
Mm.
that's that's,
Mhm.
that's what I mentioned earlier. It's the idea of the echo chamber. It's so, how about not waste your time and feed into that, and then get that as your identity. Some people literally don't know how the industry is, so they just feed themselves with all these news,
Right.
and they thought they are part of the industry already,
Hmm.
but they just don't have it. They just
Yeah.
haven't made it yet. They claim themselves to be something,
Right.
and there are plenty of people out there like that. I have to tell people that, have you ever wondered how honest artists can be with
Yeah.
themselves? Some of them can be extremely pretentious.
Yeah.
They think that they are the shit. Like they think that they're doing something nice to humanity, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not doing anything. And perhaps what I do right now, in the grand scheme of things, is not much, but perhaps it's inspires someone to keep on going forward
Yeah.
and
Yep.
do something better than what I have right now.
Yeah.
Uh, I tell I tell the people who I hire into my team is
Hmm.
that the greatest pleasure for me when mentoring people
Hmm.
is knowing that one day they will tell me that I know what to do now. I will pursue my own endeavors. Thank you so much for what you have done, and then move on. Of course, I will be extremely heartbroken because I lose some of the best people in my team, but I know for a fact, I feel rest assured that I feel assured that they have figured out some things within themselves, and they know what to do, and they get further from the point that I provide them. It took a while for me to get here, And whenever I tell this, and this is one of the things that marks the difference between my studios and other studios. I would tell
Mhm.
people that after 8 hours, get the fuck out,
Yeah.
don't work anymore.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell them, okay, I will provide you with any resources that you need to take on to do better, right? Take on anything you want. I'll get these things. I'll get all these couple tutorials. I'll get all these Patreons. I get all these Learn Squared courses.
Yeah.
Uh, right? Anything that you need,
Mhm.
I'll provide. I'll help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is great because not a lot of people are willing to do that, right? They're not willing to make that sacrifice for their employees.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, the majority of people that I hired are contractors, and I give them that, right?
Yeah.
Not even full-time employees. I just want a, I just want partners. I
Yeah.
want perhaps like even further, I want friends. I want people who I can trust,
We're all
right?
just so fucking
So
lonely, James.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it's the right kind of mentality, like, since the beginning, right? Of wanting to have people who know stuff, who can understand me, and who can get along with me, and we can do great things together,
Yes.
right? How
I
how
think it's
about that? Let's
yeah,
break
I
that.
mean, growing up in Scotland, it's the same with me here. Like, I maybe know maybe 3 people who work in the entertainment industry or work in games, but like the bulk of people around me are, average workers. They work in normal jobs. They work in normal
Mhm,
societies and foundations, but they don't have the aspirations I have to like run podcasts and work internationally and make 3D models and make stuff for movies. Like, so it can get very lonely at the top because like yeah, you then start to lose connection with like regular people also. You can talk to people from like, Vietnam or like from Scotland,
mhm,
but you don't talk about the same stuff. You don't talk about it on the level, like the passion you and I both have when we talk, which is obvious to me and both of us, how you get really excited about what you talk about, like, oh my god, this thing and this other thing and this community. You then try to
yeah,
talk to people about that who are normal, and they're kind of like, okay, right, fair enough. Well, good for you, like great, but um, it's a thing I think where I mean, definitely I think it's a thing as well where like I mean, not diagnosed yet, but I think it's like the ADHD in my brain. Like the need to create, the need to connect, the need to be doing things, and being nerdy about it. It's hard to then connect with people who are normal because like yeah, you come off as very like a nerd or like geek or like yeah, oh like yeah, that's cool, you love that thing, but like it's not really for me, but yeah, I think it's why we build these communities. It's why I do the podcast. We both have Discords. Like you just want to connect with those people and form relationships with people who are just like you, like the people who are passionate, who are artists, who are creatives. Um, and yeah, again, it's a thing it's we spend most of our life trying to do, but it's very hard to maintain friendships in this industry because people are busy or like you don't really click right away. But yeah, it's something we all strive for is trying to be together as a community.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think it also takes time to experiment with the idea of connection. Some
Yeah.
people take more time to connect. They can start out being introvert. For
Mhm.
me, right, when I talk, people tend to tell me that, oh, you seem like an extrovert. You talk a lot. But
Right.
for me, I started off being extremely shy, and then there was a time in which I moved up from high school to polytechnic, and there was this change of environment, and I simply told myself that what if I changed at this point?
Mhm.
What if I experiment with what I can do, with how I speak, with my personality? And it was somewhat a disaster as well because I expressed so much to the point that people were like, "This dude is like kind of crazy." And then I had to dial it back a bit,
Yeah.
more grounded, and then they
Mhm.
were like, okay, I can see why he says what he says,
Yeah.
and it gets better. And of course, with family as well, like I'm someone who upholds family values to a great extent,
Mhm.
and for me, it's is important to be able
Mhm.
to express what I feel and how I do things, and what I do to the people who I love, who
Mhm.
who are close to me. I can tell my grandparents what I do,
Mhm.
right? Like imagine explaining to an 80-year-old grandma like what concept art is,
Yeah.
and how it is applied into games. Imagine being able to communicate that to that extent, right? You are able to distill things down so accurately and so coherently
Mhm.
to someone of a different generation, such that it become clear to them
Yeah.
what I do. And I kind of trained myself into talking through that platform, right? To people who are close to me, and to so first off, extremely different environment, and second off, extremely close environment. So those two aspects, I kind of got it covered over time, and it gets better. And so once you build that confidence up, and you start talking to more people, you start being able to share, you start being able to generate ideas even with that skill set, and it's just a great adventure to have, right? To be able to tell people that, hey, we should do this, and you are able to explain it. It just feels great.
Yeah, no, understandable. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where, like, yeah, it just takes years and years and years of just like talking to people, just talking as much as you can. And yeah, I think it was something I've probably overcorrected over the years. 'Cause I think when I was younger, I talked way too much and tried to almost pull back because I noticed people were looking at me weird because you were talking a long time. But then it's a thing where I think because I was so nervous and shy and I was so scared as a kid that you then overcorrect, you then talk more and more and more because you want to like get rid of that fear. You don't want to be afraid of talking anymore. You want to be able to talk to people. And now as an adult, obviously it's hard because yeah, I just can't switch it off. But like, yeah, it's a very fine balance of and why I run a podcast, right? It's why we're here talking on this podcast now, because I like talking to people and interacting with people. So yeah, but like, yeah, I mean, so time's marching on and we're getting towards the hour mark, but yeah, I mean, it's like, yourself, right, as a podcast person, like you feel like at an hour you're just starting to get warmed up and you're just starting to talk about things. You want to keep going. You're like, oh god, it's too much time. But yeah, so essentially, we'll leave all the links below. But like, if people want to get involved in the community, if they want to get involved in what you're doing, where can they find you?
Sure. So they can message me on Facebook, Instagram, and of course they can visit our website Beyond the Studios, in which you can reach anything. Like if you want to work with us, just hit us up. Otherwise, if you want to join the community, just go to the community and just get into the forum. Just just lay yourself out for us, and then we'll try to fit you in. And hopefully it's gonna be a great adventure for yourself.
Yeah, James and Timothy will be sitting on their throne like this with a thumb up or a thumb down of your portfolio.
Not that
bad. Yeah. So yeah, if you guys have stayed to this point, thanks for listening. Obviously, we've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been great having James on, and thanks for James for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, grand man. Check out the other episodes we've got on our channels and check us out on other podcast services again, as always. And we'll be back with another episode very soon. So thanks to James again, thanks to you guys, and we'll see you later. Bye, guys.
See ya.